with Minnesota State Services for the Blind. Ryan, who is deafblind with Usher syndrome subtype 1, a proud husband and father of 2 young children. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Rochester Institute of Technology and a master's degree in special education from Gallaudet University. Ryan is working towards a second master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from the University of Wisconsin-Stout. And being a proud father, I want to add this, that his oldest daughter, so he has 2 girls, and his oldest daughter came up to me during our haptics training and asked when we were going to let her have her dad back. So, she was more than happy to share him, but she definitely wanted us to share him with her as well. So we had to tell Ryan that he had to speed it up because his oldest daughter was paging him. So I'm happy to introduce Ryan. So I'm gonna, if everyone can, I think everyone has muted their videos because we are going to record today. But muting the videos, what it does is it helps Ryan also so that he can just pin the interpreters and then it's not everybody up on his screen. But also just for your sake, unless you want your face on our YouTube channel for people to access later, this just also makes it so that you don't have to be in the YouTube video. So I'm gonna go ahead and push record. Ryan, I will continue to admit people if they are late to the show. And hopefully I can get a message to them quickly or I can mute their videos, I suppose. Do you have any questions for us before we get started? Okay, good. Then we'll move ahead. Thanks for being here with us.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Ryan Odland, and this is my sign name. Yes, I was in Wisconsin last year, and I remember my daughter chasing me down. She's kind of an aggressive person when she's meeting people, especially in the Midwest at the transition and different deaf schools. So anyway, let me go ahead and introduce myself and give you a little information about my background. So yes, I do have Usher syndrome, type 1, which means I am deafblind. Usher syndrome itself, there's 3 different kinds of Usher syndrome. And it's one of many disabilities under that hierarchy of the big picture of the deafblind community. And I want to explain a little bit more about the Usher syndrome and how it has impacted my life and the journey that I've had of my life growing up and my transition of becoming an adult and how it's impacted me. Usher syndrome itself, and maybe some of you are already aware, or maybe you are not aware, I was born deaf. I didn't have any vision issues at all. I had a little bit of residual hearing, and my vision was good. It was good growing up as well. I started to lose my vision when I was about 5 years old. That's when I started to notice the impacts of my vision loss and how it was impacting me. I didn't really notice it at that time. And the reason why is because it started with night vision, where I couldn't see things very well when it was dark or at night. And I didn't really even notice it. Typically at that time, especially, when you're a kid, you're getting into bed anyway. You're getting into bed pretty early at night, around 8 or 9 o'clock. And so you don't really notice that night vision change because you're not up that late. You're going to bed early enough that you're not noticing it. So I didn't notice it at that time. As I grew up, there is one big part of Usher syndrome that I started to notice. And then that was the night vision and my balance. My balance started to become very off. I couldn't keep my balance as well as I could before. Sometimes I would lose my balance very easily. Different surfaces were difficult for me. That if they were nice and flat surfaces, it was fine. But if the surface had any kind of roughness to them, it would cause me to lose if it was uneven, I would lose my balance. So going back to talking about Usher syndrome, there's two parts. There's the hearing and the RP. And RP stands for retina pigmentosa. And that's a progressive vision loss. So you have your area of vision or your field of vision, and it starts to get smaller and smaller. So you don't have that perception of seeing 180 degrees anymore. So right now, my vision is about 5 degrees. And so this is about where my vision is and where my field of vision is. Previously, I had a wider range of field of vision, but it has changed over the years and over time as I've grown up. And again, it's not something you really notice until it impacts you. And it's a very slow progression. And that's how it's happened to me anyway. Going back and talking a little bit about my birth and growing up, my parents didn't know that I was deafblind. They did notice that I had a hearing loss and that I was deaf when I was about 9 months old, not 9 years old, 9 months old, excuse me. And so they noticed I had a hearing loss. And so that's when I started to pick up some sign language and I started learning to communicate, and my parents did as well with me. So that was me growing up, and sign language is my first language. As I was growing up, I entered school. I was picking up language more and more. I was learning English, using sign language. And while I was in school, during my school years, even from kindergarten, I started to notice that something was wrong with my vision. My parents got a report from the school saying that they noticed that I was dropping my pencil on the floor by accident, but that I would have a difficult time trying to find it, that I would search for it, even though the pencil was right there in front of me. It was very obvious right there, but I couldn't find it, that I had to search for it. And then sometimes I would even give up looking for it, or I would eventually find it. And the teacher noticed that about me. And so they thought that I possibly had a vision loss. And so they sent a note home to my parents and let them know. So at that time, they were trying to figure out what was going on and why I was having a vision loss. That's how they started. That's the beginning of my journey of my identification as a deafblind person. And then that's when it was found that I had Usher syndrome. So that's really the beginning of my journey. Then during my youth, I was very active. I loved being involved in different things. I had lots of interests of a typical kid who were the same age. I'd like to play outside. I like to go out on the playground. I really enjoyed doing those things. I enjoyed water sports and different kinds of activities in my home state of Minnesota. And that's where I grew up, was in Minnesota, near the Twin Cities. I developed a relationship with my deaf friends. I had deaf roommates. And at that time, growing up, I went to different events and I learned different skills with sports, various sports, and I noticed changes in my vision at that time as well. For example, playing baseball, I noticed that that was not a good sport for me. Basketball, that was a good one because it had a bigger ball, which was easier to see as opposed to a baseball, which fits in the palm of your hand. So baseball was not a successful sport for me. And I had to learn how to adjust and accommodate and notice how those things started to change throughout my life already. Through my teenage years, we started to notice that my vision loss was becoming worse. When I was growing up, I didn't realize how much of a vision loss I had. I didn't really even think about it because my function level was very typical. And at that time, it was decided, really, they weren't sure then, once I became a teenager, if I was going to be able to take a driver's test and be able to drive for my driver's license. Those were times that, my passion was to be independent, of course, as any teenager wants to be. And so that was one of the steps in life that I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to be independent or not. But it was decided that I couldn't see well enough. And that's really when I realized how bad my vision was. And I was already labeled by that point at the age of 14 as legally blind. And I didn't even realize it. I didn't think anything of it. But I really was legally blind by that point because my field of vision was so narrow. As I was growing up, I had this skill to scan and do scanning of my environment. And so I would look around and see things. And other people do that as well, but mine I thought was very typical, where it actually was not. I did not realize that other people did not scan or have that scanning technique that I did of their environment. I thought everybody did that. I didn't realize that it had to do with my vision loss. But then it was brought to my attention and actually gave me a label of Usher syndrome and explained to me that this is not a typical activity for others. And that's really where I started to understand the Usher syndrome and how it was impacting my life. And I would say it wasn't until the age of 14 that I really understood that. And I remember being in 9th grade at that time that I started to understand all that in my life. And that was really life-changing for me. A lot of things happened during those years. Of course, as a teenager, you go through a lot of growth and change in your life. You have a lot of mental changes, you have a lot of development, physical development and changes that you're going through. And of course, you're trying to develop your independence and you're trying to find your identity. And it becomes more and more important as a person of understanding who you are and understanding your life in general and what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I always looked up to my father. He was a dentist, and I looked up to him. And he was a wonderful advocate for deaf rights, and he was a wonderful partner in policy making. There was one point where I just looked up to him so much, and I thought he was so wonderful. I wanted to be just like him. He had a high education. He went to dental school. I said, I want to do those things. I want to get my PhD. I want to, I wanted to work towards all these things. I want a graduate degree. I wanted all those things that my dad had. And it really became a part of who I wanted to be. And I really was striving towards a good education. I knew that was very important. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't have any work experience until I was about 25 years old. And before that, I was in school and in college, and it was school and college, and I just kept going. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing for me, but, I thought it was something that was going to benefit me. I think maybe if I would have had a little work experience ahead of time, that would have been great. But, sometimes you got to really develop those work interests and really narrow down what you want to do with your life and what your interests are to find what you're going to do. And then, you're planning for college, and you're really getting ready for that next part of your life and that stage of once you graduate high school, what's after that?
All right. Now, I did go ahead and take some trainings regarding dealing with my hearing loss. And I did learn Braille. That training, at that time in my life, I was in 4th grade when I started learning Braille. And then the second time I was in 7th grade when I took those courses. So again, I also took it at 21. And I did a refresher a few years ago. I was 36 at the time. Again, so 4 times over my life, just refreshing. Yes, it's definitely worth it because it's helped me become better prepared for the future of how I will access my world. The doctors have told me that I will eventually become fully blind. And yes, it's true, but it's not necessarily a fact in hitting me in the face right now, but it's something I can prepare for. Again, I can't predict what the future will hold in regards to biology or advancements. I mean, look at our technology now, or the advancements in genetics. I mean, it's just, when we talk about life and the expectations that we have and the expectations we hold on each other, even if you think about those with cancer, we can't predict in how long they'll live, or maybe they'll live 3 years, maybe they'll live a few months. You don't know. It depends on their body and their life. And with Usher's syndrome, I'm not really sure. There is no definitive timeline for myself. Could be now, it could be a couple of days, could be 10 years from now. We don't know. So that's why, again, there's no standard of practice for deaf blindness. And we can't predict too what will happen or when I will go fully blind or not. And also the situations that in my life, where I'll live or what environment I'll live in, will that impact it too? Now, having Braille training from 4th grade and learning English, and also one of those things I did learn was we practice orientation and mobility. And so that helped me learn some transition skills. Again, using a white cane, how to travel independently, other things related to that. I hated it, but really at the time, again, it was working at night. I am not comfortable with that because of my vision. I'm not able to see anything, and I really had to depend on those who were around me, and really learn to depend on how I could navigate my surroundings. And really now that exposure early on has really helped me. Now, again, I didn't like it in the beginning in the first place, but maybe as an instructor or as a student, you don't like something in the beginning, but really it'll help you out in the end. And it'll benefit you in ways you're not expecting. And really, I'm very thankful for that training, even though at the time I did not like it at all. So while growing up, again, progressing with my life, learning communications strategies, and also adapting my communication strategies. Again, I started using American Sign Language. That's my native language. I'm a native ASL user. So again, communicating with my friends, having distance, etc., asking them to move closer. Again, with deaf kids, you're chatting, and so that the back and forth communication that's happening, that's something that's innate. Again, in my situation, we had to be a little bit more, we had to educate my friends, other students in talking with me. And also working in a transition program with school, it wasn't in a deaf school. No, I attended a mainstream school, regular general education public school. So in the classroom, I was with other students who could hear, other general ed kids in the classroom. There was an interpreter there, and so I used the interpreter to get the teacher's information and to learn. And then sometimes I was alone as a deaf student, and other times there were a couple other deaf students in the classes that I attended. So in that communication that I received, it was very direct. I would get the information from the interpreter. We would be able to adjust if needed. Again, just looking at one person, that again helped me with my vision loss. I didn't have to necessarily follow where the teacher was. I could pay attention to the interpreter. But again, that's something that we had to navigate. Again, if there are 5 or 10 deaf students in a classroom, that takes a little bit more attention away from the one-on-one communication. The interpreter needs to work with all the students. And I noticed my limitations in a classroom setting like that. And then navigating through my life, different experiences that I've had. One, my father experience was, he wrote down, what was it, 91, wasn't it? Yes. He was saying that really your passion, what my passion was for me, trying different things, experiencing life as much as you can, getting as much life experience as you're able to, taking those chances, go on a trip, go to different places, experiences those things, travel, go camping, go fishing, all those different things, joining a hunting club, going duck hunting, all those different kinds of experiences, different exposures, different things that, a lot of things that other students that may not have had that opportunity that I was able to do. I've really encouraged people to become involved in activities and to get those life experiences. And again, after high school, there were some further transitions that I had to make. I did go through quite a time in my life where I was depressed. I had hit rock bottom. But then after that, there was only one place to go, up. It was really, for me, my experiences and my how I felt. There was, again, becoming blind. There was no way out of it. There was no way out of it. There is no way out of it for me currently. And as friends went off to college, my community became a lot smaller. My family was there, but again, my identity. How do I develop my identity? Who am I? What am I supposed to do with my life? navigating through that, taking one step at a time, figuring out what my next plans are. Again, my depression didn't go away overnight. I dealt with that for over 9 years. Different medications helped, of course, and then therapy, but also learning the different training skills that I had. Worked with Helen Keller, the National Center. Really, that organization really helped me develop different skills and learning more about deafblind, being exposed to that community, how I could become an advocate, also how I could be more successful and navigate life, and to develop my own identity. And so really that became a very great interest of mine. So again, at 21, before that, really, I had nothing to do with that organization per se. But from then on, really, that's where my passion took off. I wanted to be an educator. I wanted to work with students. I wanted to honor my family in their pursuit of their respective higher education. They felt education was a worthwhile pursuit, and I wanted to do that. And so that was a way that I could fulfill that part of my family obligation, my family. So again, my experience at Helen Keller National Center really was the springboard, if you will, of my opportunities. Meeting people, meeting other deafblind people, learning just more about my identity. Learning what I could do, how I could live. Really, that opened so many doors. Figuring things out in my life, or where my next step would be. After finishing the training at the Helen Keller National Center, things started to improve in my life. But again, that doesn't happen overnight, because you're still journeying along. It's not an exact science. It's a journey, really. Navigating computer science, going through those technologies, going through those programs. I liked that idea. I really loved working with computers. Writing programs, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed it as a hobby, really. Creating games, coming up with different, using my mind space to make creativity. Also, at that time, I was hooked on internet games. Of course, who isn't? Also, considering the internet games were more accessible to me than the outside world was. It was something that I could manipulate if I needed to be more visually accessible. The screen was right there. It was so easy to manipulate what I needed to in order to see. The communication was quick. People, chatting was easy. And so it was fun as well. And so that was kind of my hobby and experience before I joined Helen Keller, before I went there for the training. Once the training started, I realized realizing about protactile experiences and work and approaches. And also becoming more involved with volunteering opportunities. Being more proactive in my life, not just being internet games and things. So joining groups, having group discussions, joining support groups, other people who have similar disabilities like myself, being engaged. Really also being a leader, being a facilitator of those kind of things. Seeing all of that happen, really, at the time I felt, could I do something like that? Could I be a facilitator? Could I lead? And as I went through that, the Helen Keller National Center really helped me pick up on that and show me that I could. really it became really an internal skill, really, as I developed that. It was innate. Leading groups, it was something I really enjoyed. I realized that that was something that I could do, and I could do it. And so that moment was the initial gateway for me to really become involved in the different communities and different community events and really getting out there. Like the being involved in the American National Association of the Deafblind, different associations that are out there, different organizations like the Minnesota Deafblind Association, becoming involved in just different social clubs, developing relationships. Different celebrating different societies, and also just being together. Really, that's been a huge part of my life going forward. And so those experiences really are what led me to consider my professional interests, my career interests. Before I thought, well, yeah, I could do something like that. I want to, what would someone who was maybe work with deaf-blind youth, how could I support them? How could I help them understand options they have, the different opportunities that are available, things that I wish someone had told me, how they could become a leader in their community. And so going through all of that, really then that became my desire and passion to support the deaf-blind community. And so that's what led me to who I am today. So again, I had transitioned my degree to psychology and went from computer science to psychology. So again, with the career in supporting deaf-blind communities and students and becoming an advocate, technology kind of went by the wayside for that. So that still retained my hobby, but that was not my major. So developing on that passion became my interest, and really that led to my success in who I am today. So again, going back to my graduate degree, going back to college, going to Gallaudet, going to RIT. RIT was where I got my bachelor's degree, and then my graduate degree was from Gallaudet. So again, I got into their program and got the degree, and that was the special education degree that I got there at Gallaudet. And so that experience, that time there, picking up everything, navigating through the challenges that I experienced, of course, figuring out how I can do, what modifications that need to be made so I could access the material. Again, with my vision loss, it was receding, it was becoming worse at the time. Also using interpreters, making sure they were modified so that I could access the material as needed. The classrooms, how they were set up to accommodate a deaf-blind person. Again, the way it was set up, the way they were making it, it just made things really well. For a person with vision loss, there are a lot of accommodations that need to be considered to make it a successful environment. Also, consideration of a CDI, a certified deaf interpreter, their role of helping facilitate the communication and making it more clear. I was able to use that there, and that really helped me in my educational journey there, and really having the different myriad of options to use and to gain access to a classroom environment. The different audio things, audience and the visual cues that I may have missed that CDI was feeding me, and the side conversations that were going on. Really, that's something that I hadn't experienced necessarily up to that point to have full access to that. Like a couple talking about their breakup or whatever, things like that. Really, I hadn't gotten enough exposure to that, just to the everyday gossip in a classroom. Because of my vision loss, I only could see what was in front of me, and oftentimes that was all I got, was what the interpreter and the teacher were communicating to me. And so at Gallaudet is really where I realized how much I had missed, per se, and to be able to react to the stimulus of the classroom and to get the feel for the classroom, really to be a fully engaged learner. That really, again, having to learn everything over again, really, as a teenager, having missed all of that incidental learning, all of the exposure, just picking up on life and different discourse, I really had to open up and have those conversations again. Really, when I had access to those things, and those things came to the table really after realizing how much I had missed and how much really I had access to the general education environment. Really, I was clueless when I started my graduate program. Really, teachers would tell me, "You don't seem to have enough experience," and we're like, "Well, I'm experienced in what I know how to do what I can do, and I have experience that way." But the teachers were trying to tell me that wasn't their point. The life exposure, life experiences. So different exposure to different just everyday life experiences. And so different dialogues and the emotions.
The things that I learned from the school environment, my home environment, and everything that was going on around me as a deafblind person in general, you have a complete disconnect from that. And it's mostly because of the limitations of your hearing and your sight. And so I didn't just have enough of those exposures of life, and I didn't realize, but as I did realize that, I started learning. And when I got into my graduate program, I decided that's it. I'm gonna join a fraternity. And so I joined a fraternity, and I look back at my college years and experience and what I did, and having fun and all the things that go on in a fraternity, drinking and all those different things, your typical college experience. It was a new experience for me. It was like relearning, or even just learning for the first time, life in general. And I think that really helped lead me to understand more about my identity and the potential that I have with the experiences, and being able to understand more about my community and about people in general, and how I can help them, and being able to draw them in to help me at the same time, and understanding their roles and my roles in the world in general. So I went through graduate school. It was a wonderful experience. I graduated from graduate school with my degree, and then I started working at the Helen Keller National Center. And I've been working there for almost 7 years now. I've had different roles while I've been here. I was a coordinator of technology programs for a while. That was under the National Deafblind Equipment Distribution Program. That was under the Federal Communications Commissions, the FCC. That's who set up that program. And so I ran the New York program there, and did assessments and technology training and education of people of how to use the different types of technology. I provided resources and support for them to have increased accessibility. So that was my first job with the Helen Keller National Center. And then after a few years, then I gained more experience. I became more involved in what is now my current role as a regional representative. And that's part of my life journey. It's been a life experience. It's all about exposure and experience, in my opinion, that really helps a person identify themselves and their potential and what in life they have, and help them navigate through whatever community they're living in. I've lived in 7 different states. I've lived in apartments and houses, and I've had roommates, and I'm married, and have my wife and 2 kids, and all of that experience. It's a lot of challenges, but the benefits and frustrations, there have been a lot of frustrations, but I try to turn those frustrations into benefits and positive experiences in my life. I make those decisions for myself. I decide what is right and what is wrong. There are good options out there. There are bad options out there. It happens to everybody. But the thing is that you have to keep going, and you're constantly growing and learning. And you have to just keep going with your journey in life. You'll get there. I will be honest with you. My parents, both of my parents, they were overprotective of me. They were very overprotective. Yes, it's true. I'll be honest. But at the same time, once I was out of state and going to college, and I had that disconnect of my parents, and I started going through the experiences of the life that I was learning, and understanding the decision-making process, and having to make decisions for myself as an adult. When I went home, I realized I didn't have that exposure. And so there were some things that my parents and I had a challenging time with. I didn't realize a lot of the options that I had in my life. I don't want to say I felt negative about it, but when I look back on it, I think I would have liked to had more roles in my own decision-making process to help me understand the options that I had in life. Let me give you an example. During an IEP meeting, my mom did most of the talking, and there were a lot of decisions made for me in those. They might ask me one question during the process, but otherwise I would sit there quietly, and everybody else in the room would talk but me. And I think that was a negative experience for me. If I could have changed things, I would have taken the lead. I would have led those meetings. I would have had the discussions about my future and what I wanted. And I feel like I could have been a better advocate my mother could have been a better advocate instead of just leading things all the time. So I think there was some impact there. But when I look at the big picture of my life and growing up as a deafblind person and having to make the different changes in my life and the vision loss that I've had of having to adjust to having vision loss, I am a tactile user. 7 years ago, I started learning that because of my vision loss and because my field of vision has gotten so narrow. I've learned some haptics and tactile communication, how I can get information. And it used to be, trying to figure out the distance for communication was a challenge, especially for people who are using ASL. It went from anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8 feet apart to 4 feet apart. And as my vision has become more and more narrow, it's changed over time. But I have to make those changes. And I realized that I had to start using tactile communication. And my wife, she understands that. And she says things like, no, I don't like to sign real small and write on top. And, She prefers to have a normal signing space. And sometimes when I ask her to sign in a smaller signing space, she'll get frustrated with me or upset. And it's more about, it's not that I'm against her natural language, but I feel like I'm being denied access to language sometimes, and she feels denied space. And so there's this struggle sometimes, and we've had to decide that we use tactile language instead sometimes, and it impedes on our relationship, I feel, but when we're next to each other, we have that tactile communication. And I feel when we're further away from each other, we try to make sure that if we need to communicate, we're kind of in more of an intimate space of each other. So it's been a learning process for myself and for her as well, to be able to provide accessibility for myself. And that's one of the reasons I started using tactile, was because of my wife. I look back now on that and how I feel about it, and I don't regret it at all. I think tactile is a wonderful way to communicate, especially for people who have vision loss like myself. Being able to communicate and follow communication with others is important. The last thing I want to share with all of you, as I continue on my life journey every day with my work life and my personal life, I'm always wondering, do people approve of me? Do people approve of my vision loss? Do people approve of my hearing loss? And it's something I obsessed about for a while. But I've learned to just accept what I am, who I am, and if they accept me, they accept me. If not, if not. My role is to help them understand how we can work together, whether we have to be near each other for communication or not, and help them understand and learn the value of advocacy and being able to share information, and how I can help them and they can help me and we can have that connection in life. I think if you have that skill, it's very empowering. Growing up, I didn't have that skill, and it really affected my life in a negative manner. I had negative thoughts, negative attitude, but now I've been able to change that to a positive thought and attitude because of advocacy. There's 6 parts to advocacy, and I really value those. The first one is knowledge of my rights. As a person, knowing legally what my rights are, what my responsibilities are, that's so important. The second part is knowledge of my needs. And I don't want to say needs, but I like to say preferences rather than needs. That means that you have a preference for communication. Maybe you prefer tactile, but in a situation, it might be more beneficial to use different kinds of communication. For example, using the Zoom today, the interpreters have a nice dark background. That's great for me. They have nice dark clothes. That's great for me. That makes it accessible for me. And then I can change my needs or my preferences to accommodate me so that I can understand best and be able to communicate. As a deafblind person, I need to understand that best. And they are working with me to be able to support me instead of me going, oh well. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to empower both of us so that we can work together to meet my preferences. The third part is education. Education is so important. Everyone understands deaf blindness and Usher syndrome, right? No, they don't. And so sometimes you have to educate people individually and talk with them and teach them and expose them. And maybe you have to give them reminders again and again and again, because they may forget. It happens. But what's important is that you continuously are helping each other and making sure that you have access. The fourth part of advocacy is knowing the process and the protocol. Before, I didn't know how to be expressive of my concerns or my frustrations and how to approach different situations to be able to change those situations to accommodate what I needed. If somebody didn't have the appropriate tools or appropriate resources, I didn't always know how to help them and be able to prioritize as a person what you need. But once you can identify that, you really can resolve your problems. The fifth part of advocacy, and yes, I was an angry person at one point. I did experience that anger and negativity and negative attitude, but I've changed that. And I don't deal with anger well anymore. I think people are afraid of me because of the anger that I had in life. But I try not to be that person anymore. I try to have good, positive answers and solutions for things. So really changing those feelings and making them from a negative to a positive and working together is important. The last part of advocacy is there is no real solution to anything for one person, or it's not one answer for everyone. You have to compromise and you have to be flexible. And that's how you really get through life. Everything's never going to be perfect, but you have to learn to live life and keep going and try for whatever you want. Give it your 100%. Sometimes people only give 70 or 80% and they're satisfied with that little bit of satisfaction they have in their lives. But if you give 100%, you may not realize there's no resources or something doesn't fit your time schedule. For example, transportation. You know, I live by a limited schedule of 6 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. But what if I want to go somewhere overnight and I want to stay out late or something like that? It's important that I have some independence to me. So just being flexible, and the advocacy that I've learned along the way has helped me so much to learn about the potential that I have even now and in my future. So I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up now for questions if anybody has any about my background or experiences. And I'm willing to talk more, but that's about what I have for our presentation today.
All right.
Thank you, Ryan. Does anybody have any questions or anything, any experiences or anything as professionals that you would like to share with Ryan or ask of Ryan while we have him here on at our disposal, I suppose? You can just put it in the chat if anyone has anything specific, if you type it in the chat. Or you guys can, yeah, that's probably the easiest, the chat. While you guys are thinking, we do have Michelle Mickle, our trustee technology coordinator, did put together a poll. So I'm gonna launch the poll, and if you guys could go ahead and just identify who you are. I know some of you gratefully said who you were in the private chat for me. This makes it much easier.
Okay, it just popped up here for me and I wasn't expecting it right away.
Sorry, Ryan.
So I had to figure out what this is. or
Yeah,
how to get rid of it.
sorry, Ryan, if you hit the red dot, you can close it, but you don't need to fill this out. See, I'm not even very good at this. Normally we launch this at the beginning, so I'm a little like, and I was just on vacation for 10 days. So coming back, I'm a little rusty for sure. Okay, Ryan, I have a couple of comments here. So from Tracy, can you please talk a bit more about advocacy? What strategies can you give us in regards to prepare children to advocate? What would have been helpful to you?
Yes, thank you for asking me that, Tracy. A few areas that really benefit deaf, blind individuals, students in particular, in a school setting. First off, help them to encourage them to find their identity. Learn about their diagnosis, their hearing loss, their vision loss. Not just say, oh, have a label. What's my label? Again, have them research it. Help them become experts on their own situation, their own disability. Get them to explain what their hearing loss does, or what their vision loss is, or what they can and what they can't see. Having them understand it will help them then, in turn, advocate for themselves, ask for what they need, and they'll know what they have, and they'll be more knowledgeable of that. Have them speak up about giving them the opportunity to advocate for themselves. Maybe someone that they haven't met, explain, like, for myself, if I've never met someone, I'm gonna have to explain how the best way to communicate. What are some things that I can share, or what are some things that you can share? If you met a stranger you needed to talk with, what are some things that are helpful? Work with them on that, and that really can build advocacy skills. Oftentimes, deaf, blind, they'll feel like they feel scared, they'll feel some fear, feel overwhelmed as a person. But again, having a support network, having a support system in place, that's so important in a school setting, at home too. Again, the environment, having a stable environment, having a consistent environment, a system in place where they can be successful and receive the support that they need and the services that they can use to be successful. If anything becomes available, or the door opens to them, experiences that they can join and be a part of to grow as a person and grow in their experiences, probably that's a great key. As a person, they will need to navigate through a lot of challenges individually. They'll need to experience those. But again, how they're perceived. One thing I was going to tell you. Maybe say, better ask mom and dad about that, or something, or a mentor, or best to ask a teacher. No, encourage the person to say, when you're talking to them, just talk directly to them. Working through, have a dialogue with that person instead of diverting the dialogue or diverting around something. Approach it head on. Don't avoid things unnecessarily. If you don't know something, sure, okay, look it up, but don't say, oh, you better ask this person, or avoiding confrontation, if you will. How to help with interpreters? How interpreters work well, or what works well, or what doesn't, or an interpreter may take over, or having the interpreter sharing their preferences, having the student share those preferences, having the teacher not ask the interpreter, but ask the student what works best for them. The students will know and they can advocate for that. That's another key part of advocacy, is knowing what they need and being given the opportunity to advocate. So key situations. Students need to be able to develop their preferences and to realize that they have a voice, have the ability to take the lead in their education, instead of it being someone else taking over. So again, providing opportunities for growth are key.
I'm going to expand a little bit on that question too, Ryan, because I could tell, like, in your response, that this is also assuming that the child knows their diagnosis. What would you recommend for professionals whose parents haven't yet gotten to the point where they're comfortable sharing the diagnosis with their child? Would you recommend Helen Keller National Center, the Ushers Coalition? Where might you recommend to maybe send a parent for them to get more information, more research, so that they're comfortable sharing and understand the importance of sharing that diagnosis with their child?
Okay, this is Ryan speaking. So to answer that, the Helen Keller National Center really has wonderful resources for specifics and information like that. Different projects, if you're looking for different areas on identity, different national organizations that are available. We have different age range products and information. Also, we're a lifelong organization. We'll support students from birth to death. And so really having those resources handy when you're working with a student to help them identify where they're at, maybe work in the home or in school or any environment. We have other resources too, like the National Family Association for Deafblind, the NFADB. That's for parents. That's a good advocacy group. They have discussion opportunities and group learning and support groups and networking opportunities for kids and youth as well. There are also different state organizations. There's a Deafblind Project, Wisconsin Technical Assistance Project for the Deafblind, and then there's WDB-TAP as well. Those agencies and organizations have resources available for youth and for families, and to support the needs for the students to become successful. Also some in-state resources. I'm thinking like Deafblind, the Deafblind centers, the Center for Deafblind Persons. There's a center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There's also some local service organizations. Again, there are a lot of resources out there. I encourage parents to keep an open mind when reaching out to those organizations and doing the research. Don't stop in one area. Keep looking for more. There's always more out there and more available. Again, take advantage of those agencies and organizations in your area and what they have to offer to really support the family and the students. Bring that back to your local community to support others in a similar situation. Like at an IEP meeting, things that come up during transition ages, different high school, a student who's maybe 14, they're considering all the transition out of the education environment, either to the workplace or even at the doctor's office, or someone who's work, or like someone becoming a surgical assistant, or a student who wants to work in a hospital. Those things are discussed during an IEP meeting, and their journey starts there. And so that's so important to have as much information as possible. And so in having the information, having prepared the information and having that there also in focusing on different professions, building up to those things are very pivotal to start in the school settings. And again, depending on the perspectives that someone has or their own identity, those resources are really helpful in that. And so that's just a few of the benefits that, again, to help students achieve their maximum independence.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Heidi. The person that posted that question said, thank you so much for your insight and for sharing your story. I have a question from Ann Mays. Hi, Ann. Ann says, I have seen students who have similar experiences. I'm wondering how we might share with teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing the journey, and journey is in air quotes. Some of this is normal as an adolescent, but how might we support students who are deafblind to navigate socially and emotionally? So how do we share this with the teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing?
Okay, well, really to support them as a group, as a collective, do a collective approach. Really, inclusion is the key. It's not just the teachers, but it's also the whole classroom that can support each other, to empower, to provide equal access, to provide equality, to identify, let me go back here. So to identify communication access in a classroom, it's not just with the teachers they're working with, it's their whole classroom environment that they're navigating. And so in direct communication, how can they be involved? How can they be supported? So now there's so many new tools that are becoming available. There's one tool, the haptic communicator. Really, the haptics, really that is a communication tool that utilizes touch. Again, to use emotions, it uses actions, it uses movement, it can help clarify who's talking, who's not talking, maybe someone laughed or something happened in a classroom. So those are things that can be taught to help link the student to their classroom, link the student to the teacher. And so there's something that can be supported, of course. And having everyone use it, having everyone being exposed to it will create a better result. And again, creating the motivation for everyone to use it, that's going to be a key factor, of course. But in a teacher's role, again, their role is to encourage the students to find out also to be an advocate to how to solve their problems. Again, working through, instead of taking over for a student, instead of taking over the communication needs, and instead of handling that themselves, bringing the student up to be a leader in that, be a team player in their environment, their education. So deaf-blind students sometimes feel isolated, even more so than a general education student. So how to bring them into the classroom community, how to bring them together to promote those opportunities for social development. And of course, there need to be some modifications, but in the long run, really, it will increase awareness and it will increase the potential for success for the students to really be able to develop their skills. And in the leadership and facilitating communication, instead of being a partaker, they can really be a participant and a leader. So really, the teacher's role should be more, again, I'm going to stress this, as an advocate and to work with the student and to really encourage them. And so that's something that can be supported, more of like a consultant, a consultative role per se. And so a student, making sure a student understands the consequences of their actions. Some activities, of course, may be more appropriate than others, but again, the explaining choice and explaining options to a student, and then the student can take the lead and decide on their own.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Heidi. I have another question. It says, hi, Ryan. I am a teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing who works with secondary high school deaf students. I was wondering what you would suggest regarding transition needs for my deaf students at the high school level. Do you recommend any specific websites that I could use to help them transition to high school and also get them to think about career options? Thanks so much.
Well, again, I'll expand a little bit more. The kind of the trend of transition work, just general transition information, or something more specific are you looking for?
I would say on here, not just probably pretty more general, just how you would suggest like just the general needs for deaf students at the high school level. So like any websites that would help them transition to high school. So to get them prepared for what to expect in high school, and then even to get them starting to think about career options.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Well, there are a few places that I'm thinking about. First and foremost, mentoring is peer mentoring. Is peer and peer support is such an important part of a student's life, especially at that age. Life experiences, new challenges, navigating those challenges, being exciting about life and the things that are happening at that time. So again, navigating through those things, as they come up, it's so crucial to have someone to share those things with, to be, again, they're a challenge, of course, but again, that's all part of the journey, of course, building relationships with other deafblind students. That age group are so important because it helps build a sense of belonging, really, in the experiences that they have together. Also, they can talk about the challenges they have. Sometimes they don't even realize the challenges they're facing or other challenges that other peers may face. Sometimes they're clueless. Some people don't have good social skills. They're very weak in that area because of the access they haven't had. And so different perspectives and issues and things that come up, really, I'm going to stress that it's so important to have peer relationships at that time. So then they can assess where they are. Really, again, a place to go is the Helen Keller National Center and the Deafblind Project. Those two are places that can help provide the connections and support with other deafblind students who are similar ages. We can help connect students in that way. Again, they would have to consent. The parents would have to be willing to allow participation, and then they can reach out from there. And again, that reaching out to us or the Deafblind Project is a possibility to help build relationships and self-esteem for students, also self-confidence. And so those are some places. Another item that we could talk about for high school age students, it's such a good time to take some time and to think about their future. What are they motivated about? And what what they might need to be successful. And so are the different projects available? The Helen Keller Center has some summer programs that are available to high school students. And so they may be something close to your state as well. Different summer programs available, or students could apply and join and learn those things and to learn some advocacy skills there. Maybe they're not skills they may not need immediately, but in the future they will come in handy. Again, dealing with those losses, being included in that kind of a training. Again, those are some skills that students can apply to use. And then they're, okay, so as you navigated that, that's what you did. And so they're not necessarily then feeling at a loss for themselves. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And so having the ability to just, navigate and not think this is the end of my life, giving them the opportunity to see others really and to meet others in similar situations, encouraging them to be parts of these opportunities and to network. Again, getting perspectives, building community, building relationships, joining those projects. Again, colleges may offer different technology fairs, etc., different camps that students can be part of to develop their interests and to give them an opportunity to test out their theories and to also narrow down their future ambitions, their thoughts, and what they would like to pursue instead of sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to happen. So those are my top recommendations for that. One other suggestion that's important is to just have a network services provider, really connecting with your local community. We can connect pen pals. Also, there's opportunities too, even on social media like Facebook and other sites that can help connect students and connect families with each other. There's deafblind students that can join different chat groups. Per se, Helen Keller National Center is offering a peer learning group. And so really that PLG, that peer learning group, has several different topics where they can discuss and to learn about different skills that can apply to their lives. That's something that we offer there. It's so important that students really take advantage of that as much as possible. And as they learn, they'll figure out what they're comfortable with and who they can be. Okay.
We're going to do an interpreter switch. So Mary Fruits is going to take over the interpreting role. This is Heidi again. I also wanted to mention, I wanted to add to that also to say that Outreach this summer has put together a series for virtual student gathering interviews. So we will be interviewing, this is really targeted toward that transition aged group. And so we will be interviewing a number of people. I think we have 5 or 6 on the docket, and we're including deaf adults of color, female, male. We have a deaf-blind person joining us, actually, Chris Woodfill, who Ryan also works with. He's with the Helen Keller National Center. Chris Woodfill used to be a teacher for the deaf at the Wisconsin School for the Deaf. So we always enjoy the opportunity to have him join us for events. So for people looking for transition and maybe career options, those interviews, we will also be recording them so that people can access them later. But that might help you with some of that ideas about what worked for certain people as far as websites or resources, deaf role models. As Ryan mentioned, we're working on deaf and deaf-blind adult role models for students. So we have a few things in the works. Renee Ambrose wanted to comment, Ryan. She said, I appreciate your continued use of the word potential. It is positive and reminds us that all people have potential. Jolene Gruber asks, you said that you wish you would have led the IEP meetings more. How do you think you could help someone to do that without all of your life experiences? What would you say to the 12-year-old sitting in the room?
Can you repeat the question for me, please, Heidi? I just want to make sure that I caught all of that.
Sure. So you have had so many rich life experiences where you sort of knew that you could lead or participate more in your IEP. What would you say to a 12-year-old who doesn't have all of these life experiences, and letting them know that they are the captain of their ship, that they have a voice at their IEP meeting? What would you tell that 12-year-old?
That's a strong, powerful question because there's not just one right answer. However, one thing I think is important is to focus on your strengths. Focus on their strengths and not just focusing on their limitations. Have them focus on their strengths. Help them to analyze what skills they have, helping them identify their motivation and their strengths in life, I think will help them to grow and be able to add more to their lives. Have them try different things. Give them every opportunity you can instead of just sitting back and allowing them to withdraw. Give them those opportunities. I think there's a quote that says something like, a person is born to be a leader. Others learn and become leaders. And then there's the third person who can become great. They can become all of those things. But it doesn't mean that it's just one person can be everything. Not everybody can become president of the United States or own a business or, go to school, but everybody has the, like they were saying earlier, potential to be a leader. And I think it's important to focus on the positive. Again, through my life, I focus so much on my medical diagnosis and, oh my gosh, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? Is my vision going to get worse? But what you have to do is, this is what you can do now, and focus on what you can do now and stay positive about it. Often people feel like, I have to accept my identity. I have to accept this. No, it's okay to have wishes, and it's okay that you wish you want to see better or something like that. That's all right. However, how you adapt is the most important part of your life journey. Making those changes and being flexible throughout life and staying positive and never forgetting that positivity. Not just forgetting about it and going, oh, my vision's getting worse, or, I can't do this or I can't do that. Think about the positive things that you can do. And I think that's going to carry over into life in general for them.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Ryan. And I would agree. And I would also maybe add, this is also a role for the teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing when you talk about being an advocate. in helping that 12-year-old identify those strengths and be able to articulate their strengths and encourage them and empower them to participate and be active in their IEPs. Those teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing, very important people. Then I have, let's see, a teacher saying, "Thank you, Ryan, for sharing. This will help me guide a young man, especially giving him lots of room for his own self-advocacy to develop into the young man that he can be." And then Marilyn, Marilyn is asking if we charge for Marilyn is asking you, Ryan, is there a charge for the peer learning group that you mentioned? Is there a cost for that for families or for students?
Sure, this is Ryan. The peer learning group that we have, it is free. We just recently set this up back in April. And so it's a new program, but it has been a very hot and popular group. We have 80 plus deafblind students who have registered for the different groups that we have and that we offer. For example, one group is a discussion of how to be an expert shopper, how to be the best shopper when you go into the store and buying clothes and buying food and things like that, being the expert shopper there can be. And then others are talking about budgeting and money, and then some are interested in self-advocacy trainings and learning the different aspects of advocacy. We also have another group that's for Usher syndrome specifically. We have a support group for people who are hard of hearing students and who are considered deafblind, who have a vision loss but also a slight hearing loss. Then we have another group that focuses on technology and technology safety and social media and internet safety. So we have different groups, and it's just a way, again, for people who are deafblind to be able to meet each other and be able to talk about a specific subject. There's not more than 8 people per group. We do change up the groups sometimes. We're going to be offering different groups along the way, but these are all free that we're offering. So if you're interested, you can contact me, because I am your regional representative for the state of Wisconsin. So for the state of Wisconsin, the other 6 in the other 5 states, but as a regional representative, I can help you find something regionally as well. And if you're not in our region, then I can help you get connected to your regional representative. One other thing I'd like to add, I did have, well, let me go back. Let me start a little bit with my role, because I do teach one of the groups myself. And it's a self-advocacy group. There is one group that the students have additional disabilities as well. So it might be an intellectual disability, it might be language delay disability. And there is one teacher who joined the advocacy training who is deafblind, and they work in supporting the students with any additional communication or expansion that they might need during the different topics that are being discussed. Maybe they don't understand something, and so they'll help clarify and help them through the trainings. So that's another option if somebody who is joining, one of the students is joining that might have an additional disability or have additional needs or accommodations. We still welcome them. Parents are welcome, siblings, teachers, interveners, anybody who works with people who are deafblind. It's really important that those people have access. So we want to make sure that they're able to access the groups 100%.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Ryan. I have a question also related to the peer learning groups. Is that for any age?
This is Ryan. I would say it's for, well, it's been a challenge because we're trying to focus on services for those who are 14 and older. However, we have been a bit flexible. If we have somebody who's 12 or 13, but they've really got an interest in the topic, we welcome them to join the peer learning groups for free. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for them to have that exposure. There are some concepts that they might not be ready for at those younger ages, but it's still good exposure for them to have.
This is Heidi. Thank you. The reason I ask is I know the WDB TAP sends out a quarterly newsletter, and they're always looking for sort of topics to highlight. And so I could see the peer learning group being a topic to highlight for families and for professionals to share with their students. And this will allow us to put sort of that age range in there and perhaps target specifically our transition age students. So speaking of transition, oh, go ahead, Ryan.
If there's anybody who's interested and wants to learn more about the peer learning groups, you can search through Google or any other search engine on the internet, and you can just look up peer learning group, Helen Keller National Center, and it'll pop up on Google for you or your search engine. So, and then there is a explanation of how to sign up, and it's super simple to get to.
Awesome, thank you. You had mentioned previously about the summer programs that are available through the Helen Keller National Center. And I remember back like a long time ago when I first started in the world of deaf blindness that we sent a couple of high school students actually to the Helen Keller National Center in New York for a summer assessment in a variety of areas. And so I wondered if you wanted to talk at all about that assessment that is available, what summer programming is available, and then whether or not you know, does Department of Voc Rehab help share costs for transportation to get students to New York, or what you know about that?
Sure. This is Ryan. I don't want to go on too long about all of this, but our summer programs, there's 3 different kinds of programs that are available. The first one is the M-Power, which is my pursuit of working and empowerment and providing resources. This program is designed for those who are 14, 15, and 16, but it could be really anybody 14 and up. It focuses on personal care and future planning and assessing what their interests might be, what kind of training they might need in order to achieve a goal that they have, or it's just about really planning their futures. And the goal is to maximize their potential, at the same time providing independence, giving them that independence so that they can become a successful member of the community no matter where they live. Somebody could live with their family in the country. That's fine. We can assess that and try to figure out what would be a good place for them to live and how they can become as independent as possible, and again, maximize their potential for success. No matter what community they're in. Are they going to live in an apartment? Are they going to be a homeowner one day? No matter what it is, we assess what kind of skills and trainings they might need to become successful. The second program is the summer assessment program. This is an 8-week summer program, and it again is for people who want to have different experiences of evaluations. There's 5 core areas that they focus on. The first is Braille communication skills. The second is independent living, home care, cooking, cleaning, personal management. The third core area is transportation skills and mobility, and how to stay safe to get from one area to another, knowing where they're going, and how to develop their understanding of and navigate through their community. The fourth core area is technology. So they learn everything there is regarding technology and accessibility, different softwares and hardwares that are out there for them as far as Braille equipment, etc. Screen magnifiers, anything that will help with magnification for sound or Braille or whatever they might need. And then the last core area is job skill training. And so maybe they don't have any kind of experience. We work with them. They learn how to work with coworkers, interpersonal skills, how to work with supervisors, how to get the accommodations that they need to be successful at their job or their career. And so those 5 key areas are what are focused on. Plus we also offer services for audiological needs. And again, it's just really to make sure that they have the best they can for their sounds and vision, maximize those skills that they have, making sure that if they have residual hearing that they can hear clearly. If they're more low vision, focusing on lighting in a room. If they're outside and it's too bright or it's too dark, maybe different kinds of glasses they might need for the environment that they're in. If they're in an office environment or outside or the workplace, sometimes those fluorescent lights can be extremely bright and horrible on the eyes, and so there are different kinds of glasses, for example, with the yellow tint or the amber color that might help them. Again, we try to find what meets their needs and prevent the eye strain and weariness that their eyes will experience, the stress that their eyes might experience because of the lighting. Also, there's self-advocacy that's taught along the way. The third summer program that we have is a summer youth vocational program, and that focuses more on work experience. Compared to the summer assessment program, they're more of a broad, more balanced evaluation for different skills, while the summer vocational experience is really an in-depth, everyday work experience, Monday through Friday. They gain more work experience. They work 3-4 hours a day. And then the rest of the time, the 2 or 3 hours a day, they work on trainings. So they learn different skills and how to apply those to become successful workers and have good work experience. We might assess and find that they need transportation skills along the way, or there might be other deficits in their needs. And so we try to figure out how they can be self-sufficient. We look at grooming and how to take care of themselves, those personal hygiene skills, so that they are appealing to the workplace, working on simple things like grooming and oral care and just the things that are considered self-care in a workplace as well. Of those 3 programs, the first program that I mentioned was 2 weeks long. The assessment is 8 weeks long, and the job program, the career program, is 6 weeks long. And this summer, because of COVID, unfortunately, we had all these virtually set up, and now we are offering those options for people who it doesn't benefit to do things virtually, where they really need to be in person. We are trying to do the virtual the best we can. However, it doesn't always work for everybody, especially when you're talking about work experience and things like that. So we are looking at virtual job mentoring and job shadowing so that they can job shadow other people and see and learn what other people are experiencing virtually, and trying to make it more interactive and getting that dialogue going and what that environment looks like, learning more about the interviews and how they can go through that and what it looks like in the job place, in the workplace. The summer assessment is very similar. The first program is very similar as well. But as far as the transportation skills, because of safety reasons, we haven't been able to get out and evaluate those skills necessarily. That's something you really can't do virtually. And so that's something that's kind of been put on hold just for safety reasons. But there are plenty of other areas, especially with the assessment group, that we're able to focus on. But those are the 3 different summer programs that the Helen Keller National Center offers for anybody who's deafblind to be able to receive, or how, if they are interested in participating. When you asked about VR and if VR will help pay for transportation and for the services, our training of the 3 training programs, they are there is a stipend per week because they will be sleeping in a dorm. The food is provided, so it's $525 on top of that. So it's a total of $1,150. Many programs can be even more costly than that, and so we feel that we're a pretty reasonably priced program. We already have federal funding on top of that that covers most of our services, but at the same time, we are also including the cost for paying for the VR, for the support of our staff and the program and those costs. The best place to start is to talk with the Helen Keller National Center, talk about what your needs are, what program you're looking at, what's the best fit, and which program is going to be the best fit for the student. And then at the same time, contacting your VR program and let them know that you're interested in joining the Helen Keller National Center program. See if they'll be willing to work with you and have that conversation with them. They may have other options, or they may need to identify goals or trainings before you can get an approval for that. That would then cover the cost for the trainings and cover the cost for the transportation, if that person has an open case with VR. If they don't have an open case with VR, then of course the parents would have to pay for those things out of pocket, especially the transportation. And the program costs, sometimes the parents have to pay, and then the program costs can be covered by VR. But the only way you can get VR to cover the transportation costs is if you already have an open case with VR. So you have to work with your local VR, work with the Helen Keller National Center, figure out which program is the best one for them to join. And so those are the steps, and you have to look at the budgeting. The VR program will be looking. Another option is, if we do open it, if you are a person who has an open VR case, you'll want to make sure to keep that case open, because then there's other options that are open to you. And then, like I said, they'll cover transportation and the cost of the services as well. So there's 2 different avenues that you can take specifically for the transportation. I think that covers everything.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Ryan. I know that there are amazing opportunities, and the students that we have been able to send from Wisconsin have all found it extremely valuable. Excuse me. So I have another question for you related to that. Do you, as a Helen Keller National Rep, are you able to participate in IEP meetings? For example, when the student is when they're developing a transition plan for students who are deafblind, are you able to participate in those IEP meetings, or do you have to set up like a separate meeting where it's not the IEP, for example?
The short answer is yes, I can be involved in IEP meetings. My role does provide resources and consultations. We're able to be involved in that. So if there's anything outside that's a possibility, or different tools that can apply to that student's needs or accommodations, different planning required that, or different programs that I can suggest, I can help the team plan and strategize, and also help the parents have that understanding and awareness and knowledge of the different options that are available for their students.
This is Heidi again. And so is that for students who are transition aged, or is that again for any age?
This is Ryan speaking. My role is more focused on transition age, so those who are 14 and older. But we do also provide advocacy and support for students who are younger than 14, but understand we highly encourage the family to work with professionals and partner with Wisconsin DB TAP, because they really are the primary source of services in their state, and they're able to share resources that are going on. So if you have any difficulties, though, you can always contact the Helen Keller National Center, and we can provide more resources that are possibly available.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Ryan. So much information. I did put in the group chat Ryan's email address. I will also add the email address for the Wisconsin Deafblind Technical Assistance Project. I could also put in the website in that group chat as well. We do not have any more questions at this point, and we have just 8 minutes left. So we've almost, like, this 2 hours has just gone by so quickly. But every single person that has commented in the group chat has thanked you so much for sharing your story, and for being willing to share the resources, and to be able to explain a little bit more about Helen Keller National Center in general, and how they can support our teachers, well, our professionals, our families, and our students. So I don't know if you have any last words of wisdom before we sign off. This will be, like I said, we are recording it, so this will be available after the fact, and people have your contact information. So I don't know, you have any last words of wisdom, or any last things that you want to share with us before we sign off?
This is Ryan. People who are deafblind have so much potential to be successful in the world. You may have to guide them and encourage them and empower them and show them the way. But they really can be so successful. And I want to say to, again, don't focus on the negative. Think positively. It's okay to not accept your deafblindness, but what's important is to adapt. Understand that adaptation is going to be necessary, always. And always think about your future. Don't obsess about problems that you're experiencing now. Everybody has lessons in life that they have to learn, and your future planning and having those solutions will occur. Advocacy is such an important part of our success. And it's important to always have a good support system. Always make sure that you have awareness of people who can be supportive of the person who is deafblind. So, yeah.
This is Heidi. It's always, oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I do have one final thing I want to say, and it's actually a quote. It's okay to fail.
This is Heidi. It is okay to fail. I always say it's okay to fail. It's not okay to quit. Like, I don't think you fail until you quit. So I
Exactly. You are right, Heidi.
So I want to thank you so much for you joining us. It's always a pleasure to hear you. It's always a pleasure to see you, and you have such wonderful information to share. So I don't see any other questions or any other comments in the chat. So I'm going to say, let's call it a day. Thank you for all of you who joined us. Ann Mays is saying, thank you so much, Ryan. Everyone enjoy your Tuesday and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone. We're all done.
So Ryan, this is Stacy.